So there's been a ton of buzz lately, especially after this launch coming out of Shenzhen on March 6th. Manus, they're calling it. And it's kind of sent shockwaves, I'd say, through the global AI community.
Definitely seems to have touched a nerve.
Yeah, and it kind of brings to the forefront a question that I think a lot of folks have been kind of wrestling with, which is, what happens when AI starts making its own decisions, like truly independently?
Well, I think the intensity of this conversation is a real indicator, right? It kind of feels like we're on the cusp of something, maybe a huge shift in how we think about AI's role in the future.
Absolutely. So that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to try to unpack this whole Manus AI thing, really get a grip on what it's all about. And the sources we've got, they paint a pretty interesting picture. Potentially, we're looking at a revolutionary type of AI agent that can think and act on its own.
Sound like a pretty tall order.
Right, so we've got a few key sources we're going to be looking at today. There's this article, China's autonomous agent, Manus, changes everything. We've also got the transcript from a YouTube video called Introducing Manus, the general AI agent, and then some excerpts from the Manus website itself. But we also wanted to get a bit of a counterpoint. So we've got this TechCrunch article, a little more skeptical, called Manus Probably Isn't China's Second DeepSeek Moment. And then finally, a look at some of the financial side of things, the potential impact from Investors Business Daily. Meta stock wipes out winning streak gains. Wall Street is sizing up Manus AI chatbot competitor.
Yeah, if you look at it in context, right, the trajectory of AI as it's evolved, you can definitely see why something like this would get people talking. Like, the concept of autonomous agents has been around, but to see it potentially moving from speculation to reality, that's got to be a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. So for all of you listening, today's deep dive is all about trying to answer some key questions. What exactly is Manus AI? Why is everyone so excited about it? But also, why are some folks pumping the brakes a little? And then, thinking big picture, what can this mean for the future of AI as a whole?
Lots to cover.
We're going to cover as much as we can, try to give you all the key info without getting too lost in the weeds.
Sounds good.
So let's just jump right in. First and foremost, what is this thing? What exactly is Manus AI?
Well, from what I'm seeing, it's really important to understand right off the bat that this isn't being presented as just a better chatbot or a souped-up search engine. The claim, the core of it, is that it's a fully autonomous AI agent. And that's where things get interesting, because what they're saying is it can actually function and make choices within the digital world without a human constantly having to pull the string.
Okay, so that's different, right? Not just giving us information, but actually taking actions.
Exactly. And the article, China's Autonomous Agent, they actually go so far as to say it doesn't just assist humans, it replaces them. Like, that's a big statement right there. Suggests a completely different level of capability.
Yeah, like it's not just filling in the gaps, it's taking over entirely. Wow.
Right. And they also call it a digital polymath, which is fascinating. This isn't about being hyper-specialized in one area. It's about being able to navigate and handle all kinds of tasks across all sorts of industries.
So a real jack of all trades AI edition.
Right. And what's really interesting is this emphasis on achieving what they call end-to-end results without human prompts. That's a big departure from how we typically think about AI, right? Most of the AI we interact with now, we got to tell it what to do, feed it information, guide it along the way. Manus is supposedly different.
So instead of us being in the driver's seat, it's more like we give it the destination and it figures out how to get there all on its own.
Yeah.
That's a pretty radical shift. But how does it actually pull that off? What's under the hood that lets it be so autonomous?
Well, they talk about something called a multi-agent architecture. It's like a team of AI agents, each with its own special skills working together. Imagine a central executor agent, kind of like the project manager, who coordinates with all these different sub-agents. There are planners, there are knowledge agents, all sorts of specialists, each designed to tackle a specific part of a complex task.
Okay, so not just one big AI brain, but more like an AI team with different players.
Right, exactly. And this multi-agent approach, the China's autonomous agent piece really dives into this, is pretty unique in the world of autonomous AI. It's not something you see everywhere.
And I guess that makes sense. If you wanted to be able to handle all these different types of tasks, you need that kind of flexibility, right?
Absolutely. And they can deploy these specialized sub-agents as needed, depending on the task at hand. So it's like having an AI workforce that adapts to the project.
Now, the YouTube transcript mentions that it's actually built on top of some existing large language models. Specifically, Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet model and some refined versions of Alibaba's Quinn models. So it's not like they started completely from scratch, right?
That's a really important point, and the TechCrunch article kind of hits on this later. But what they're saying is that the innovation isn't necessarily in creating a whole new AI from the ground up. It's about how they're using and combining these existing models to achieve something new.
Okay, so it's more about the application, the way they're using the tools rather than the tools themselves.
Exactly. And the way they're doing that, they're integrating it with a whole bunch of different external tools. The YouTube transcript mentions 29 different tools, plus a bunch of open source software. And this allows it to do all sorts of things like browse the web, interact with APIs, run scripts, even develop software.
So it's got its hands in a lot of different pots. But that's how it's able to be so autonomous, right? It's got the tools to actually go out and do things in the digital world, not just think about them.
Precisely. That extensive integration is really key. Because it can interact with the digital environment in so many ways, it doesn't need a human to constantly tell it what to do. It can gather information, carry out commands, all on its own.
And here's something else that I thought was really interesting. The China's autonomous agent article mentions something called a virtual compute environment in the cloud. Basically, what that means is it can keep working on a task even after you, the user, have logged off or shut down your computer.
Oh, wow. So it doesn't need you to be babysitting it.
Right. It'll just chug away in the background and then notify you when it's finished. That's a pretty big difference from something like ChatGPT-4 or Google's Gemini, which usually require you to be actively engaged, giving it prompts and instructions.
Yeah, that asynchronous capability, being able to work independently like that, that's a big deal. The article makes a point of highlighting that. They're saying that Manus is designed to initiate tasks on its own, constantly assess new information, and then adjust its approach on the fly. And that's why they're calling it the first true general AI agent.
So it's not just following a pre-programmed set of rules, it's actually able to adapt and learn as it goes.
Okay, so now we're starting to get a sense of what this thing is and how it works at a high level. But to really grasp the potential here, we need to see it in action, right? And the sources actually provide some pretty compelling use cases.
Absolutely. Like the resume screening example. Both the China's autonomous agent article and the YouTube transcript mention this. You give Manus a stack of resumes, and it doesn't just scan them for keywords or something like that. It actually reads each one, figures out the relevant skills, compares those skills to what's in demand in the job market, and then it actually gives you an optimized hiring decision. It even generates an Excel spreadsheet with all its findings.
So it's going way beyond just helping you filter. It's actually analyzing and making recommendations. That's impressive. Definitely. Another example is apartment hunting. You don't have to give it all these super specific criteria. You can just say something like, find me an apartment in San Francisco, and it'll take it from there. It'll factor in things like crime statistics, rental trends, even the weather. Like, it's really trying to understand the whole picture.
So it's not just following orders, it's thinking ahead and trying to anticipate your needs.
Right. And then there's this example of this tech writer, Rowan Chung. He wanted a bio written about himself and a personal website created, so he gave the task to Manus. And according to the China's autonomous agent article, it took Manus no time at all. It scraped his social media, figured out the key details of his career, wrote the bio, coded the website, put it online, even dealt with some initial hosting issues, all without him having to lift a finger.
So it's basically like having a personal assistant that can code and design websites.
Right. And the YouTube video, they actually have a bunch of demos. Resume screening, property research where it breaks down the task, uses Python scripting, generates reports, all sorts of stuff. They even show it doing stock correlation analysis where it accesses financial APIs, writes code to analyze the data, creates visualizations, even deploys a website to present the findings. It's pretty amazing to see it all in action.
Yeah, like these are not simple tasks we're talking about. And the Manus website itself, they have this use case gallery that shows even more examples. Everything from creating travel handbooks for Japan trips to doing in-depth Tesla stock analysis, building interactive courses, comparing insurance policies, even finding suppliers for businesses, doing market research for AI products in the clothing industry, making lists of Y Combinator companies, analyzing how well online stores are doing based on their sales data. It's all over the place. They even mentioned someone asking it to build script writing tools.
Sounds like they're really trying to show that it's not limited to just a few specific areas.
Right, like it's a general purpose AI that can handle whatever you throw at it. But, and this is where things get interesting, there's also a fair amount of skepticism out there. The China's autonomous agent piece initially framed this as a potential second DeepSeek moment. Now, for those who might not be familiar, DeepSeek had this huge breakthrough in AI back in late 2024. Can you kind of fill us in on that and why some are saying, hold on, maybe Manus isn't quite the same thing?
Yeah, so DeepSeek, they were kind of like the big story in AI for a while. They came out with DeepSeek V3, which is a pretty serious contender to OpenAI's GPT-4. And then they released this R1 reasoning model, which is a big deal. It was even showing better reasoning abilities than some of OpenAI's models on certain benchmarks. So this was seen as a major moment for Chinese AI development.
Like China was finally catching up, maybe even surpassing the competition. But the TechCrunch article, they have a different take. They're saying Manus probably isn't China's second DeepSeek moment. So what's behind that skepticism? Why are they pumping the brakes a little?
Well, there are a few reasons. One is that, unlike DeepSeek, Manus wasn't built entirely from scratch. DeepSeek developed their own AI models from the ground up, while Manus is using a combination of existing models. It's taking Anthropic's Claude, Alibaba's Quinn, and fine-tuning them. So it's not quite the same level of fundamental innovation, right?
So it's more about clever integration than pure invention.
Exactly. And then there are the early user experiences. The TechCrunch article, they talked to some folks who've actually tried using Manus, and it hasn't always been smooth sailing. This guy, Alexander Doria, from an AI startup called Plies, he said he ran into all sorts of problems. Error messages, endless loops, stuff like that. And other users on platforms like X, they've been reporting inaccuracies, inconsistencies, even cases where it just couldn't find information that's readily available online.
And the TechCrunch reporter themselves, they actually tried using Manus for some pretty basic tasks, right? And it didn't go so well.
Not really. Trying to order a fried chicken sandwich, it crashed. Trying to book a flight to Japan, it just gave links, restaurant reservations, failed. And then the big one. Trying to get it to start developing a Naruto-inspired fighting game. Total roadblock.
Well, that's kind of a bummer, right? Like, if it's supposed to be this super capable AI that can handle anything, you'd think it could at least order a sandwich.
Well, to be fair, Amanda's spokesperson did say that they're aware of these issues and that they're focused on improving things during this closed beta period. So maybe it's just a matter of time before they iron out the kinks.
Yeah, you got to give some room to grow, right?
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, where did all the hype come from in the first place?
Yeah.
If it's not quite living up to the expectations yet, what got everyone so excited?
The TechCrunch article has a few ideas about that. One is that the beta program has been very exclusive, so not many people have actually had a chance to try it out. That kind of limited access can breed a lot of hype. Then there's the fact that Chinese media have been really pushing Manus as this big national success story. That kind of patriotic pride can definitely fuel things. And then there's the role of social media. Apparently, some AI influencers have been spreading some maybe not entirely accurate information about Manus's capabilities. They even showed a video that made it seem like it was directly interacting with smartphone apps, which wasn't actually the case.
It's a little bit of overselling, maybe. And unlike DeepSeek, which actually open sourced some of its technology, Butterfly Effect, the company behind Manus, they haven't done that yet. So it's harder for people to really see what's going on under the hood and verify the claims.
Exactly. With DeepSeek, there was a lot more transparency. They let the AI research community poke around, see how things work. That's not happening with Manus, at least not yet. So it's understandable why some folks are a little skeptical.
Okay, so we've got this interesting situation where you've got these really ambitious claims, this vision of a revolutionary AI, but then you've also got these performance issues, this lack of transparency. It's kind of a mixed bag. But let's step back for a second and think about the bigger picture. What could the impact be if Manus or something like it actually lives up to the hype? What are the implications here?
Well, I think the biggest potential impact, and the China's autonomous agent article really hammers this home, is this idea of AI moving from being an assistant to being an independent actor. And that could have huge implications for how we work, for how we think about jobs. If AI can really handle complex tasks from start to finish without needing a human to supervise it every step of the way, that's a pretty big deal.
Like it could potentially displace a lot of workers.
Exactly. They even talk about the industrialization of intelligence, which is kind of a scary thought. Basically, the idea is that AI could become so efficient, so productive, that companies might just start replacing human workers en masse simply because it's cheaper.
And it's not just about jobs, right? There are all sorts of ethical and legal questions that come into play. Like, if an AI makes a bad decision, who's responsible? If it screws up a financial transaction, if it causes some kind of damage in the real world, who takes the blame? The people who created it, the person who gave it the task? Or do we start thinking about AI being held accountable in some way?
Those are really tough questions, and honestly, I don't think we have good answers yet. The whole legal and ethical framework around AI is still in its early stages, especially when it comes to this idea of truly autonomous AI. China, they might be a little more willing to experiment, but even they don't really have clear rules for this kind of thing yet. And in the West, where regulations are based on this assumption that humans are in control, it's even harder to figure out how to deal with something like Manus.
It's like the law is trying to catch up with the technology.
Exactly, but it's not all doom and gloom. There are still people who see a lot of potential in Manus, even with the skepticism. The Investor's Business Daily article, they quote this analyst from RBC Capital who said that Manus could be another DeepSeek-like moment in terms of its ability to reason and take action. So even if it's not perfect yet, some folks are still recognizing the potential.
And that potential seems to be having an impact, even if it's just in the stock market. The IBD article mentions that Meta's stock actually took a hit after Manus was announced. Like, investors are starting to worry that this could be a major competitor.
Right. But the same article, they also quote an analyst from New Street Research who brings up a really important point about distribution. Unlike Google, Amazon, Meta, all these big tech companies, Manus doesn't have this huge existing user base to tap into. So even if the technology is great, they still have to figure out how to get it into people's hands.
It's not just about building it, it's about getting people to use it. And there are still a lot of unknowns. We don't know exactly which AI models they're using or how they're managing the computational costs of running all these complex tasks. Those are important factors to consider if we're trying to figure out whether Manus can actually compete in the long run.
Absolutely. It's still early days. We've got the claims, we've got the tech, we've got the examples, we've got the skepticism, we've got the potential impact. But what about Manus itself? What are they saying about all of this? What's their vision?
Right, like what do they think they're doing here?
Well, they say their mission is to bridge minds and actions, to deliver real results that go beyond just thinking. They see Manus as the next paradigm of human-machine collaboration, even a glimpse into AGI. That's artificial general intelligence, the idea of creating machines that are as intelligent as humans that can learn and understand any task that we can. It's a pretty bold vision.
Yeah, like they're not just trying to build a tool, they're trying to change the way we interact with technology entirely.
And they say they've already achieved state-of-the-art performance on the GAI benchmark, which is specifically designed to test general AI assistance. They even talk about Manus successfully solving real-world problems on freelance platforms like Upwork and Fiverr, and doing well in Kaggle competitions.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is, at least to some extent. But the TechCrunch article did mention that Manus's outperformance on the GAIA benchmark was specific to a certain area, so maybe they're focusing on a particular niche for now.
Right, they're definitely trying to position themselves as leaders in this specific area of general AI agent capabilities. And to their credit, they are talking about being more open in the future. They say they're planning to release some of their models later this year, specifically the ones that they call postering for Manus. That could help address some of the transparency concerns.
Yeah, opening things up a bit would definitely go a long way. Oh, and I thought it was interesting, the name Manus itself, it comes from the Latin word for hand, which kind of symbolizes applied knowledge, like taking abstract thought and turning it into action.
It fits, right. They see Manus as the hand that brings your mind's vision into reality. It's about using AI to extend our own abilities, to amplify what we can do.
So to sum all this up, what we're looking at with Manus is a potential game changer. This autonomous AI agent that could fundamentally change the way we use technology, taking over tasks that we used to do ourselves. And the examples they've shown, they're definitely impressive.
But we also have to acknowledge the other side of the coin. The early users, the tech experts are raising some valid concerns. The performance isn't always there yet, the transparency isn't great, and it's still not clear if Manus is really as revolutionary as they're making it out to be.
So for all of you listening, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Manus? Are you excited about the possibilities? Or are you a little wary of the potential downsides? It's definitely a topic that sparks a lot of different emotions.
I think the whole conversation around Manus really highlights how our relationship with AI is changing. We're so used to AI being this helpful assistant, but now we're starting to see it as something that could act on its own, that can make its own decisions.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. If we really are on the verge of AI becoming truly autonomous, if we're creating machines that can think and act for themselves, what does that mean for us? What does it mean for how we define work, how we define creativity, even how we define intelligence itself? These are questions that go way beyond just one AI system. They get to the heart of what it means to be human in a world where machines are becoming increasingly intelligent.
Wow.
So keep thinking about this, keep exploring, because the future of AI is being written right now, and it's a future we're all going to be a part of.